Greeks go to the polls on Sunday to vote for or against, yes or no, to a European bailout proposal. The country is divided and the mood is volatile.
Much anxiety amongst Greeks right now. They want to see a firm resolve from Europe. They want to see a plan that's mapped out in the right way for the whole of Europe, and indeed this colossal debt restructuring exercise that has to go on with this country.
Started from the beginning with a hypothesis that about 25% of the population won't pay. So it cuts the population into two parts. Those that are going to pay the tax and the others who are not going to pay, who are going to lose their property because they cannot pay the tax.
It's crunch time again for Greece. Eurozone finance ministers are meeting in Brussels to assess whether the country has met its obligations under the biggest bailout in history. Since 2010, Greece has received more than $250 billion in two international bailouts.
Dominating the skyline here in Athens, Greece's cultural jewel, the Acropolis, somehow symbolizing the current need of the country itself, with massive cranes towering above it for structural support.
Greece is one of the few countries where your rent can rise faster than your salary, and that's saying something. Since 2020, housing costs in Athens have exploded, sometimes by as much as 80%. Meanwhile, wages barely moved. For many, it means working two jobs just to keep the lights on. For others, it means moving back in with parents well into their 30s. This isn't the Greece you see in travel ads. This is the Greece where the cost of living is climbing, wages are stuck, and young professionals are packing their bags for good. So, why is living in Greece becoming so hard? Let's break it down.
They say a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Have Europeans made the most of this one? Another last chance summit to save Greece underway, and according to who you believe, it's also a summit to save the euro.
Let's start with the obvious. You can't afford a country where your paycheck barely covers your rent. In Greece, the minimum wage is 830 euros gross per month. That's before taxes. After deductions, you're lucky if you clear 750 euros. It barely covers a week's worth of bills in Athens. Many young Greeks are stuck in part-time gigs, freelance hustle, or seasonal work, especially in tourism. It's work without benefits, without stability, and without a future. Just enough to survive, not to thrive. Meanwhile, those with degrees or skills, there simply aren't enough jobs that match their education. And the ones that exist often pay far less than what similar roles offer abroad. That's why so many young professionals, doctors, engineers, IT grads, are leaving. Since the 2010s, hundreds of thousands have moved to Germany, Australia, or the UK, chasing better wages, better prospects, and fewer gray hairs. Adding to the pressure, the cost of daily life keeps rising. Food inflation is brutal. Basic groceries like bread, milk, and olive oil have jumped 20 to 30% since 2021. Utility bills? Through the roof? Especially electricity. Post-energy crisis. Even the VAT is 24%, one of the highest in the EU, making everyday purchases sting that much more. Imported goods are pricey, and even local produce, the stuff Greece is famous for, costs more than it used to. Some Greeks now cross into Bulgaria for cheaper groceries, fuel, or dental work. And here's the kicker. Greek productivity is solid. People are working hard. But the reward? Shrinking. It's no wonder you'll hear the phrase, working full-time and still poor, thrown around in cafes, job interviews, and family dinners. In Greece's 2025 economy, wages aren't just low. They're completely disconnected from everyday expenses.
Thousands of refugees in Greece are living in housing provided by the government. But now, having been granted asylum, they're being forced to find new accommodation to make room for other asylum seekers. Giannis Giannias tells us more.
This block of apartments near the port of Piraeus is a temporary home for some of the thousands of refugees that already have been recognized as refugees by the Greek authorities.
But even if you manage to scrape by on a tight salary, good luck finding a place to live. If you live in Athens, Thessaloniki, or anywhere remotely urban, you've probably noticed one thing. Rent is out of control. Back in 2020, you could find a one-bedroom apartment in central Athens for about 400 to 500 euros. In 2025, it's common to see 700 to 900 euros and climbing. That's a 50 to 80% increase in just 5 years. In some neighborhoods, it's doubled. And it's not just rent. Home prices have also surged, up to more than 45% nationally since 2018, according to the Bank of Greece. Even locals who once owned homes are now being forced to sell or leave their properties because they can no longer afford the costs associated with them. Long-term tenants are getting evicted as landlords chase higher short-term profits. Entire apartment blocks are turning into holiday rentals. As a result, homelessness has risen, and many young adults are stuck living with their parents well into their 30s, not by choice, but because independence is unaffordable. The housing crisis in Greece didn't just happen. It was built one tourist booking and foreign buyer at a time. Over 150,000 properties are listed on Airbnb, an enormous number for a country of Greece's size. Why? Because short-term rentals bring in more money than long-term leases. Landlords who once rented to Greek families now cater to tourists for triple the profit. Then there's the Golden Visa program.
Greece has witnessed a remarkable 37% surge in property purchases by Indian investors between July and August. This flurry of activity is driven by Indian buyers eager to secure permanent residency under Greece's Golden Visa program. Before, of course, significant regulatory changes took effect on September the 1st.
Since 2013, Greece has offered residency to foreigners who invest 250,000 euros or more in real estate. For many wealthy buyers from China, Russia, and other parts of Europe, this was a bargain. They move fast, snapping up properties in Athens, Thessaloniki, and on the islands, not to live in, but to rent out or flip. By 2023, Greece had issued over 10,000 golden visas. The result? Entire neighborhoods turned into investment zones. Once affordable areas are now flooded with luxury renovations, cocktail bars, and boutique hotels. Local can't compete. In 2024, Greece raised the investment minimum to 500,000 euros in key locations like Athens and Mykonos, but for many, it's too little, too late. Prices had already skyrocketed, and the housing stock had already shifted toward foreign ownership and tourism. And for ordinary Greeks, the impact has been brutal. Families pushed out, workers can't live near work, and young Greeks can't afford to live at home. So yes, wages are low. Housing is scarce. But here's the twist. It's not just Greece failing its people. It's the one thing that's supposed to be saving the economy, tourism, that's making it worse. Tourism is one of Greece's biggest earners. However, for many locals, it has become a daily expense. Every summer, 30 million tourists flood in, nearly triple the population. Buses overflow, hospitals fill up, and entire neighborhoods become impossible to navigate. It's not just crowded, it's unlivable. And remember the Airbnb boom and golden visas we talked about earlier? Tourism's the fuel behind it. Short-term rental surge, foreign investors swarm, and locals priced out of their own neighborhoods. And the jobs, seasonal, underpaid, and unstable. Waiters, cleaners, receptionists. Greeks are working long hours in tourism, but not building stable lives from it. In places like Athens, locals avoid the historic center altogether. It's no longer built for them. It's built for tourists, for visitors who will leave in a week, not the people who live here year-round. Yes, tourism brings cash, but when it takes over your economy and reshapes your cities, the cost isn't just financial, it's cultural, social, and personal. Tourism may fill hotel lobbies, but when it floods the streets, it leaves public service start to crack under the pressure. Outside the big cities, accessing basic healthcare feels like a luxury. Some rural hospitals are running with over 50% of nursing positions unstaffed. Places like Syros and Rhodes are barely keeping the lights on. That means longer waits, overcrowded corridors, and serious risks when time matters most. In Athens, some major public hospitals are overwhelmed. Emergency rooms see up to 1,000 patients in a single shift. Beds run out fast, so patients lie on stretchers in hallways. Wait times stretch into 8 or 9 hours, pushed longer by years of staff shortages. The result? In 2023, nearly 12% of Greeks couldn't access needed healthcare, well above the EU average, and among the poorest, it's almost 1 in 5. Schools fare no better. In a 42°C heat wave, parents were seen hauling portable fans into air conditioning-less classrooms, an example of a system that's been underfunded and stretched too thin for too long. And public transport, whether you're commuting in Athens or Thessaloniki, or living in a smaller town, the buses are aging, infrequent, and unreliable. Many routes aren't even running regularly anymore. Greeks pay their taxes expecting basic services in return, but increasingly, it feels like the deal has been broken. And when that social contract breaks, when people do their part but feel abandoned by the system, frustration turns into something deeper. Fatigue. Greece is tired. And not just economically, socially, emotionally, politically. Protests have become a regular rhythm of life. Over pension cuts, education reforms, and rising prices, the list keeps growing. There's a growing sense that no one's listening, not local leaders, not Brussels. Voter turnout has dipped sharply. Political parties are viewed as self-serving, the EU distant and indifferent. And everyday conversation isn't about the future anymore, it's about survival. Should we stay? Should we leave? Who's to blame for this mess? Greece is a home for many. And if things don't change, it risks becoming a paradise only for outsiders, while the people who keep it alive get pushed out. This isn't just a rough patch, it's a warning. Greece deserves better, and so do its people. If you want more stories that show the side of places you won't see in the brochures, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what's next. Thanks for watching.